Have you ever had that suffocating feeling of being behind in life? As if everyone else received a secret map, and you were left behind, lost, trying to guess the next step? Your brother already has a solid career, his own house, maybe kids. Your childhood or college friends are getting married, traveling, celebrating achievements. And you, still trying to figure out what your next move is, feeling like you're always running to catch up with something, but not knowing exactly what. Does it sound familiar? It's as if there's an invisible timeline, a cruel ruler with well-defined markings. Career by 25, marriage by 30, kids by 35, financial stability by 40. And when you don't fit into that script, shame starts to creep in. Guilt, the feeling of failure. And the worst part, you don't even know if you wanted all of that, but still, you feel wrong for not having it. Maybe the worst part isn't even the comparison with others. Maybe it's the silent pressure from your own mind, that corrosive thought that whispers, "You're falling behind." And what makes it all more unbearable is when those who should support you, your parents, your uncles, your friends, look you in the eye and ask, "And you? When are you going to get your life together?" As if you owe some schedule you never chose to follow. But what if I told you that all this suffering comes from a lie? That you are destroying yourself by believing in an illusion that was never yours? What if the anguish of being behind is a symptom of a sick system, and not a failure of yours? Alan Watts said, "Life is not a journey. If it were, the goal would be to reach the end. And in that case, the best music would be the fastest." But life is not about arriving. It's about being. It's about dancing while the music plays. And if you're dancing to a different rhythm than others, maybe the problem isn't your rhythm. Maybe the problem is believing that everyone should follow the same beat. This video is a direct conversation with you, who is tired of feeling insufficient, who looks around and sees others moving forward while you feel stuck in quicksand. I'm not going to offer you cheap motivation or success formulas. What I'm going to give you here is something much more powerful. A rupture, a new lens, a surgical cut into this cultural anxiety that taught you that life is a race and that you are behind. You will realize that what you call failure can actually be a sacred time of maturation. That being lost might be the only way to truly find yourself, and that others aren't as far ahead as they seem. They're just following a script they don't even know if they chose. So breathe and prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear may forever change the way you see your life. Let's begin. Have you ever wondered why there is so much pressure for your life to follow a certain script, with such specific deadlines, almost as if you were a product on an assembly line? Because that is exactly what modern society has done to human existence. Alan Watts saw this with brutal clarity. We have turned life into an industrial project, timed, full of mandatory stages. And if you don't keep up with this pace, you are seen as defective, a deviation, a failure. From an early age, we are taught that the value of a life lies in the milestones it collects: the diploma, the job, the marriage, the home ownership, the children, retirement. Each of these achievements is treated as a mandatory station you need to reach, and within a specific time frame. And the longer it takes you to reach these stations, the more shame you feel. Because it's not just about what you're living, it's about how you are being evaluated by others. By your family, your colleagues, even by strangers who only know you through your social media posts. But what if this schedule is an artificial construct? What if it is a trap? Watts invites us to observe that this linear progress mentality is an illusion inherited from an industrial era where everything needed to be measurable, predictable, and efficient. We applied this logic to machines, then to companies, and now to ourselves. We have become managers of our own time, demanding from ourselves emotional productivity, financial success, and behavioral stability as if we were walking spreadsheets. You are not a cog. You are not a product. And your life should not be measured by efficiency metrics. The pain you feel for being behind is a direct result of this perverse logic. But here's what no one has told you. Maybe you are not behind. Maybe you are exactly on time in your unique journey. But you are measuring yourself with a ruler that was not made for you. And as long as you keep trying to fit into this mold, you will continue to feel broken. Have you ever stopped to think about why society fears those who step off this script? Because people who do not follow the assembly line are dangerous. They question. They live authentically. They remind others that life can be more than hitting targets and following deadlines. And that is frightening. Watts did not say this as a naive poet. He saw the root of human suffering precisely in this desperate attempt to achieve an illusory security. He wrote, "This insecurity is the result of trying to be secure." The more you try to fit into an artificial system, the further you distance yourself from your essence. The more you chase social approval, the more you disconnect from your truth. And here's the paradox. You only find peace when you stop searching for it in the wrong places. You only find meaning when you stop trying to meet expectations that were never yours. But then, if life is not this race for goals and achievements, what is it? What is the natural rhythm of existence? And how does Alan Watts invite us to see life in a completely different way? Not as a journey with a destination, but as something much more powerful. This is what we will explore in the next part. Get ready to deconstruct everything you believed about the purpose of life. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Imagine for a moment that life is a song, not a song with a glorious final note that justifies the entire melody, but a dance, a flow, a continuous improvisation. Alan Watts, with his sharp and almost subversive wisdom, said, "Music is significant not for reaching its last note, but for what happens between the beginning and the end. If the goal were the final note, composers would only write endings. And yet, you live as if you are always trying to get there, as if full realization were at a fixed future point that will justify your entire existence. But what if that point never arrives? What if it doesn't even exist? The truth, as unsettling as it may seem, is this. You have been conditioned to see life as a project, with goals, phases, achievements. But Watts confronts us with the idea that this is an illusion. Life is not a straight line with a glorious end on the horizon. It is a process, an event, an ongoing experience, and the more you try to treat it as something to be completed, the more you destroy it. Since childhood, everything has been organized to reinforce this structure. School to get a diploma, diploma to get a job, job to earn money, money to buy a house, house to build a family, family to achieve stability, stability to die in peace. Do you see the absurdity? You go through each phase with an anxious eye on what comes next. And in that process, you are never really present anywhere. Your existence becomes a constant rehearsal for something that never debuts. Alan Watts denounced this modern mind addiction to projecting life always into the future, as if the now were just a corridor to what really matters. He wrote, "If happiness always depends on something expected in the future, we are chasing a will-o'-the-wisp that ever eludes our grasp, until the future and ourselves vanish into the abyss of death. If you are always waiting for the next achievement to bring you peace, you are chasing a ghost, because the moment you reach it, it changes shape. The next job, the next relationship, the next goal, and the present, wasted, ignored, reduced to a tool. And here's the irony. Everything you seek, freedom, love, joy, security, can only be fully lived in the now. Not in the idealized future, not in the romanticized past, but in this moment. Yet you are so busy trying to get there that you don't realize you are already here. Watts compared this logic to an orchestra that speeds up the rhythm of the music to get to the final note sooner. Imagine sitting in a concert hall and seeing the musicians rushing through the scores, hurrying every chord, as if the end were the highlight of the experience. You wouldn't hear any beauty. You would hear chaos. And that is exactly what is happening with your life when you live in "I need to get there" mode. You are not late. You're just dancing to a different song. And maybe, just maybe, you're playing the only melody that truly belongs to you, while judging yourself by the rhythm of others. But if this constant comparison with others is destroying your joy, why do we keep doing it? Why do we continue to feed the anxiety of being behind? What exactly is behind this impulse to measure our lives with the ruler of those we don't even know if they are happy? In the next part, we will expose the most silent and corrosive addiction of our generation, comparison, and why it may be sabotaging every second of peace you are trying to achieve. Have you ever noticed how comparison entered your life without asking for permission? It doesn't come as a declared enemy, but as a habit disguised as curiosity. You open Instagram just to see what others are doing, and in a few minutes, your mind transforms into a silent courtroom. You compare yourself to someone's body, another's house, a third's success, and when you close the app, you feel an invisible weight in your chest, a mix of frustration, envy, and inadequacy. This is the most consumed drug of our time, comparison. And the most dangerous part is that you don't even realize you're addicted. Alan Watts said that the greatest tragedy of the modern mind is that it lives trying to prove itself real through the eyes of others. We confuse being with seeming, he said. And that's exactly what happens when you measure yourself against others' lives. You begin to exist only in relation to what the other has achieved, to what the other seems to feel, to what the other displays. You cease to be the subject of your own life and become a spectator of a narrative that isn't yours. Comparison is an addiction because it feeds an endless cycle. Every time you feel inferior, you seek new references to try to inspire yourself. But this inspiration is toxic because it doesn't come from genuine admiration. It comes from the feeling of being left behind. You don't just want to grow, you want to catch up to someone. And that someone changes faces every week. It's a cycle of self-sabotage. You never win because the game was created to keep you dissatisfied. Watts saw this as a modern form of psychological imprisonment. He wrote that the human mind is the only instrument capable of torturing itself with images it invents. And that's exactly what happens when you compare yourself. You suffer from an idealized version of reality that doesn't even exist. The success you envy is a carefully curated showcase. The happiness you project onto others is a filtered, illuminated, and controlled reflection. You are punishing yourself for not being an illusion. Think of the people you admire, or even envy. You see the photos, the moments of victory, the rehearsed smiles. But what you don't see are the sleepless nights, the silent crises, the paralyzing doubts. You compare your internal chaos with others' organized facades. And this is an unfair comparison, because it's a comparison between your inside and others' outside. Watts said that comparison is the thief of joy. And he was right. Because while you try to reach the shine you see in others, you forget that your shine has never been outside. It has always been overshadowed by the reflection of comparison. But there's something even deeper here. This need to compare is not just social, it's cultural. It has been planted in you. Since childhood, you have been taught to measure your worth by grades, performance, achievements. Competition has become the emotional language of our civilization. And now, even as an adult, you continue to follow the same childish logic. If the other has more, I have less. If the other is ahead, I am behind. It's the math of unhappiness. But here's the secret that almost no one tells you. What you call being behind is often just a difference in pace. Each mind has its own time. Each soul matures at a different rhythm. But the system doesn't want you to realize this because comparison is the engine of consumption, productivity, and obedience. The more you compare yourself, the more you try to catch up. And the more you try to catch up, the more you feed the machine that profits from your sense of inadequacy. Have you noticed that this pressure doesn't just come from outside? Sometimes it comes from the closest people, family, friends, colleagues, those who say they care but end up pressuring you to follow the same script they chose. Their judgment can be the echo of collective comparison, and understanding this is the first step to freeing yourself. In the next part, we will dive deep into this point. Why your family and the people around you project so much expectation onto you, and how, in fact, they are trapped in the same illusion. We will understand how this chain of comparisons crosses generations and why breaking it is the first act of true freedom. Have you ever wondered why the people who should support you the most, your parents, siblings, uncles, cousins, are often the ones who pressure you with seemingly harmless questions that weigh like stones on your chest? So, when are you going to settle down? When are you getting married? Have you thought about taking a civil service exam? How long are you going to stay in this uncertainty? Phrases like these are not just curiosity. They are constant reminders that, in the eyes of your family circle, you are off schedule. But here's the truth no one told you. These pressures are not about you. They are projections of the insecurities, fears, and regrets of the very people who are pressuring you. Alan Watts knew this when he said that people live seeking security in forms and models they themselves do not understand. They just repeat them because that's what they were taught. The pressure you feel is not personal. It is systemic, and it spreads like an invisible virus from generation to generation. Your mother may love you deeply, but she was taught that happiness is synonymous with stability. Your father may be silently proud, but he was conditioned to believe that success only has value if it comes with a fixed salary and health insurance. Your uncles and cousins who bought houses and started families may be trapped in lives they would never choose again, but they need to justify their own decisions. And pressuring you is an unconscious way to validate the path they themselves took. Watts saw this as one of the greatest mistakes of modern thought, trying to control the lives of others to avoid facing the emptiness of one's own. When your aunt compares you to the engineer cousin who already has his apartment paid off, she is not attacking you. She is trying to silence a doubt that screams inside her. What if I had chosen differently? What if my life had been another way? But instead of facing that emptiness with courage, she pushes that weight onto you and disguises it as concern. This is the hidden root of family pressure. Fear. Fear that you will be happy without following the script. Fear that your freedom will reveal their prison. Fear that your courage to explore the unknown will dismantle the lie they repeat to themselves every day. They don't want to know if you are okay. They want to know if you are still within the bubble. Because if you escape, they will have to face their own dissatisfaction. And here's the most brutal point. As long as you keep trying to justify your journey to people who live inside that bubble, you will feel behind. Not because you are actually behind, but because you are trying to be understood by those who have not yet learned to listen. And that is not their fault, but it is also not your responsibility to carry. Watts reminds us that you cannot wake someone who is pretending to be asleep. Many of these people do not truly want to understand your journey. They want you to return to the known, predictable, acceptable path, because that makes them feel secure. But security built on the denial of authenticity is just another name for prison. That's why setting boundaries is an act of love, for yourself and even for them. Saying, "This is not open for discussion," may be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Because your life is not an argument to be defended, it is an experience that only you can live. But how do you start to break this cycle? How do you escape the invisible web of expectations, pressures, comparisons, and self-imposed demands? Is it possible to break this illusion without isolating yourself from the world? Alan Watts believed so, and he proposed not only reflections, but practical actions to dismantle this existential trap. And that is exactly what we will reveal in the next part. 4 powerful attitudes you can start applying today to free yourself from the anxiety of being behind and truly begin to live. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. The truth is simple, but brutal. No one is going to free you from the anxiety of being behind. Not your parents, not your friends, not your therapist, not this video. Only you can do that. And freedom doesn't come from a magical epiphany. It comes from practical, conscious choices made every day. Alan Watts wasn't just a philosopher pointing out problems. He offered paths, real tools for you to free yourself from illusion and start living with presence, authenticity, and lightness. And that's what this part is about. Disarming the silent bomb that lives in your mind with actions you can practice now. 1. Stop consuming comparison. You have no idea how much social media is distorting your perception of reality. Every time you scroll through your feed, you see curated snippets of lives that seem flawless: trips, weddings, sculpted bodies, synchronized smiles. But what you don't see are the behind the scenes, the emotional voids, the existential crises, the sleepless nights. As Watts said, you are trying to compare other people's stage with your messy dressing room. And that's unfair. Reducing social media consumption isn't an escape. It's mental hygiene. You need to protect your mind from the continuous distortion that comparison feeds. Do digital detoxes. Mute profiles that evoke more envy than inspiration. The peace you seek isn't in the next post. It's in the silence you avoid. 2. Redefine success based on your values. Write this question on a piece of paper right now. If no one was watching, if I didn't need to prove anything to anyone, what would a well-lived life look like for me? And answer with brutal honesty. Maybe it's having flexible hours. Maybe it's living in a cabin in the mountains. Maybe it's writing books, creating art, or simply having time to take care of your mental health. The answers will shock you, because you'll realize you've been feeling behind on goals that were never yours. And that's devastating, but also liberating. Because from here, you start to build a life that makes sense for you, not for the audience. 3. Practice radical presence. Anxiety only exists in the space between now and the idea of what should be happening. But if you stop right now and look around, what is really missing at this very moment? Do you have a roof over your head? Are you fed? Are you breathing? Then why do you suffer as if you're falling into an abyss? Watts stated, "The reality of now is bearable. It's the imagination of the future that destroys you." Start cultivating moments of real presence. Smell the coffee. Listen to the sound of the rain. Walk without haste. Stop rushing through life to reach what you don't even know if you want. Because what you're looking for, peace, clarity, meaning, has never been in the future. It has always been hidden in the now. 4. Set boundaries firmly and compassionately. You don't need to explain your life to anyone. Period. When someone asks, "When are you getting married? When will you settle down?" Respond. I'm building a life that makes sense to me, not following a social timeline. I appreciate your concern, but this isn't open for discussion. It's not aggressive. It's mature. You owe nothing to others' expectations. And the more you reinforce this boundary, the more people will begin to understand that your life is not up for judgment. Watts said, "Freedom begins when you stop asking for permission to be who you are." And this kind of stance not only protects your energy, it inspires others to do the same. These 4 practices aren't magical, but they are profoundly transformative. Don't wait to feel ready to start. Change begins the moment you decide to step out of the cultural hypnosis that told you that you're behind. The truth, you are exactly where you need to become who you are destined to be. And perhaps everything you've experienced up to this point, the doubt, the confusion, the fear, wasn't wasted time. It was preparation. But for all of this to truly make sense, there's one last piece missing. A radical perspective that closes this cycle of liberation. That what you call lost time may actually be the fertile ground from which your most authentic life will emerge. This is what Alan Watts reveals to us with one of the most powerful questions ever asked. What would you do if money were no object? And that's exactly where we're headed in the final part. Because your answer to this question could change everything. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes for a moment. Now imagine that all the anxiety, the comparison, the guilt of being behind completely disappears. Silence. No pressure. No demands. No invisible ruler measuring you. Just you, whole, present. And in this clean space, a question that Alan Watts loved to ask arises. What would you do if money were not an issue? If you had all the time, all the resources, all the freedom, how would you choose to live your days? It seems simple, but this question carries existential dynamite because it destroys the illusion. It exposes that much of what you call goal is, in fact, conditioning. You work for money, but money is not the end. It's just a means. And what is behind that means? What do you really want? Freedom, creativity, silence, impact, connection. When you answer honestly, you realize that maybe you have never been behind. Maybe you were just following a path that was never yours. Life is not a straight line with checkpoints. It is a living, organic, unpredictable flow. And what you call stagnation may be incubation. What you call failure may be refinement. What you call lost time may be silent maturation, invisible to the eyes, but essential for you to truly blossom. How many people do you know who arrived quickly, who achieved everything on time, but by 40 are exhausted, trapped in lives they hate, hostages of choices they never questioned? As Watts said, if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. And what is more tragic, you might even win the race and find out you ran the wrong course. Perhaps everything you're experiencing now, the doubt, the discomfort, the not knowing, is, in fact, the fertile ground where your real life will be born. Because questioning the path is the first step to finding your own. And when you let go of the rush, when you silence the comparison, when you break the cycle of inherited demands, something profound begins to happen. You hear your own voice. And it is not late. It is just waiting for you to stop running to finally be heard. You are not behind anyone. You are not being left behind. You are exactly where you need to be to become who you are meant to be. But this process only happens when you stop chasing a borrowed idea of success and start dancing to your own music. If this message resonated with you, I want to invite you to comment below. What would you do if money were not a problem? Your answer could be the beginning of your liberation, and it may inspire others who are living the same conflict. And if this conversation was important to you, don't stop here. The next video is also essential. It will further expand everything we started to awaken here. You are not alone on this journey, and it is just beginning. I'll see you there.